As we observe this Memorial Day weekend, we promise some 4th of July fireworks as we discuss some of the nation's most pressing problems with two of the newer voices on Capitol Hill. Republican Allen West of Florida, a Tea Party favorite, and Democrat Donna Edwards of Maryland, a member of the Progressive Caucus. And we welcome both of you to Fox News Sunday.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Let's start with Medicare and Paul Ryan's plan to turn it from a fee-for-service plan into a voucher system. Congressman West, even though this wouldn't start until 2022, you got some pushback at one of your town hall meetings recently. Let's watch.
Yeah. Hands off Medicare!
Congressman West, as we saw in the special election up in New York State this week, where the Democrat beat the Republican and Medicare was a big issue, as we see in the national polls, a lot of people, especially seniors, don't want to see Medicare change this way.
Well, I think when you look at Paul Ryan's plan, first of all, there is no change for anyone that's a senior, 55 years and above. But as I sit here right now, I'm 50 years of age. And we already know that the Board of Trustees has said you got 13 years and something very bad is going to happen with Medicare. So what is going to be there for myself when I get 63 to 65? So I think the thing that we see is at least there's a plan out there to try to have some type of reform. And there was a great article by Mr. Stanley Druckenmiller in the Wall Street Journal back on the 15th of May that talked about the fact that the financial markets, a lot of these bond markets are looking to see, are we going to have some type of long-term viable solution and plan as we go forward for these entitlements?
Let me pick up on that, Congresswoman Edwards, because the knock against the Democrats is you don't have a plan, that congressional Democrats didn't pass a budget last year. Senate Democrats aren't offering a budget this year. President Obama talks about having an independent panel of medical experts who are going to find $200 billion of cuts somewhere. At least they've got a plan.
Well, I think it's not true that we don't have a plan. And in fact, when we passed the Affordable Care Act last year, we put in some real markers for Medicare that, in fact, reduced Medicare costs. We invested in preventive care for seniors because we know that the real drivers of Medicare are those long-term costs of care that happens at the end of life. And the Republicans are very interesting because in their budget, what they would do is repeal preventive care, prescription drug coverage. We also closed the donut hole there, which is costing seniors a boatload of money and is not very efficient for the system. So to say that Democrats don't have a plan, I think is incorrect. I mean, in fact, the plan is to preserve and protect Medicare for future generations, and the Republicans want to dismantle it.
Yeah, but I think that as you sit here and look at the two of us, one of us has voted to cut Medicare. When you looked at the fact that you voted for the Patient Protection Affordable Care Act, which had $500 billion of cuts in Medicare. And we also have this Independent Payment Advisory Board, these 15 bureaucrats that are supposed to control the cost of Medicare. I mean, that's something that really does scare seniors. What we're talking about is something that does not affect any senior, anyone 55 years or above. We're talking about something that does present some type of viable plan to sustain Medicare for the future, because as we know, it was put out 3 weeks ago, it won't be there.
Well, the congressman thinks that that seniors are only interested in what's good for them, and what we know about our seniors, whether they're in South Florida or in Maryland, is that they actually care about what happens with that next generation. They care about whether we're going to cover preventive care and prescription drug costs,
so that they're and
that they are not sent into the private market to negotiate with insurance companies. We know that that would be a failure, and that's exactly what the Republican plan calls for. I can't negotiate on the
Let me move on to another thing, because the biggest difference, it seems to me, looking at your two positions on how to deal with the deficit is over taxes. Congresswoman Edwards, you have a big plan to increase revenues, and let's put it up on the screen. You would raise tax rates for the wealthy. You would raise the estate tax, you would tax capital gains and dividends as ordinary income, and you would end tax subsidies for oil and gas companies. So, raise taxes in the middle of a recovery?
Well, let's be clear. Raise taxes on the wealthiest 2% who have run away with the store for the last 10 years and haven't put money back into the economy. And that's a fact. Because if that trickle-down theory had worked, our economy would be in good shape right now. And so I do subscribe to a plan that says, you know what, middle income earners, you know, you've already shared a fair burden of your taxes, but the wealthiest 2% have not, and there's no excuse whatsoever for continuing taxes for people who make over $500,000 a year.
Yeah, I got a very interesting article here. It was written on the 26th of May by Stephen Moore for the Wall Street Journal. It talks about, we're talking about a 62% top tax rate and the absolutely abysmal effects that will have on this economy. And one of the great things he says here is, in the end, the Tax Foundation recently noted that in 2009, the U.S. collected a higher share of income and payroll taxes, 45%, from the richest 10% of tax filers than any other nation, including some such socialist welfare states. So I think that we're already getting a lot of the juice from those top brackets. But go back and look in history, Donna. When we looked at Coolidge and Harding, they took those marginal tax rates down to 29%, and the percentage of revenues per GDP grew. But then after them came Hoover and Roosevelt. They took it from 24% up to 83%, and the percentage of revenues decreased. Even John F. Kennedy, when he came in and saw a 91% marginal tax rate, said that was too high. He took it down to 71%.
I'd like to just go back to the Reagan tax rates. I mean, if we went back there, we would actually do a lot to cure the system. And I think that what's happened here is we've got tax rates at the highest income levels where whether it's George Soros or it's Bill Gates or whatever billionaire, millionaire doesn't pay the amount of taxes that their secretaries pay. I mean, and I think the American public understands that this is not fair.
That may be true in some exceptions, but the vast...
Chris, and more than that...
There are some statistics that show that the vast majority, the people in the higher income brackets pay the vast majority of taxes.
Well, but it needs to be proportionate to their income. Incomes for lower income, for middle income Americans have remained stagnant for about the last decade.
47% of wage earning households don't even pay federal income taxes. So what are you talking about?
Let me finish.
How can you make it proportionate if they don't even pay, Donna?
And the fact is that if we were to extend these tax rates for the wealthiest 2% over this next decade, it would cost the American public a fortune because in your budget you don't even pay for them. They haven't been paid for the last decade.
Who produces jobs
and it's been an unfair burden on the American public. Well, I would love it if those wealthy people who are holding on to those tax breaks actually put their money back into the economy. The fact is that they haven't, and we've been sitting on...
Because of the economic uncertainty that we have.
Okay,
we've been sitting on a lot of capital as a result of that.
Which brings me to the economy and the question of how you jumpstart the economy. Congressman West, House Republicans offered a plan this week to do exactly that, to get the economy going, to boost jobs. Let's take a look at the plan. Cut the top tax rate even further for individuals and business to 25%, less regulation, more patent protection, and pass free trade deals with other countries. Whether that's good policy or not, the fact is we did see lower taxes and less regulation under President George W. Bush. We ended up in a recession.
Well, the important thing is this. With President George W. Bush, he grew government, and he increased the government spending. And so you cannot have a cut in taxes and then also have a gross enlargement of government. That's one of the things that we don't want to see happen. I got to tell you, here I have been here in Congress for about 5 months, and I had legislation that has passed that will save the American taxpayers $800 million because I found 3 wasteful Department of Defense programs. And so the thing is, why aren't each and every one of us up here in our respective committees or whatever looking for those wasteful programs so that we can those expenses?
Congresswoman Edwards, what do you think of the GOP plan as I just outlined it? And I'd also like you to answer this, and go ahead and talk directly to Congressman West as you do. The Obama administration pumped $1 trillion in stimulus into the economy. The Federal Reserve has pumped trillions more. We've got 9% unemployment. We've got 1.8% GDP growth. It isn't working.
Well, I mean, I don't know that I agree with that because, first of all, let me finish here. I mean, first of all, the $1 trillion for our stimulus package, actually $786 billion, was absolutely necessary to make sure that this economy didn't go into a free fall. We also know that we had to make sure that we began to stimulate the kind of growth that we need in this country and to invest in the future. You know what? I agree with with the congressman here. I think there are actually some things that we could do, both in terms of cutting back wasteful spending, but everything has to be on the table, from the Defense Department to every single department. But your party hasn't. And
well,
so,
I am in the
and
party,
so,
so obviously.
your party hasn't. And so I want to go back. I want to make sure that we're really looking at the budget, but we also have to look at revenues, and that is a fact. We have to look at revenues in this country, which have actually gone down.
Let me ask you about that, Congressman West, because wait. The fact is that if you're going to get a bipartisan compromise, you know there's going to have to be some